The Women's Initiative for Entrepreneurship and Leadership Development, Texas, is a career incubator program launched by the Office of Inclusion, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship at the University at Texas at Austin. This program lays the foundation and provides the infrastructure to guide women from diverse backgrounds into leadership and executive roles in corporate America. WIELD Texas participants will benefit from a combination of professional skills development and personal support, along with an immersive and unmatched experience learning directly from leading executives and entrepreneurs. And with that, I would like to introduce our moderator, UT student, as well as a member of WIELD, Ms. Joyce Cobway. So Joyce, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Maya. Hi, everyone. My name is Joyce Cobway, and I'm currently a senior at the University of Texas at Austin, and I am part of the wonderful WIELD program. I'm super excited to be here, and thank you to everyone who has joined us tonight. I will start off by introducing all of our panelists, and then we can get started with our event. So first, we have Ms. Crystal Berger, who is a media tech entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of EBO, which is an on-demand expert bookings API that is committed to breaking barriers to entry in media using emerging technology. Previously at Fox News, Berger tripled network bookings while overseeing expert guest bookings for 1,300 local Fox affiliates nationwide, in addition to hosting and producing a national news feature and podcast airing on Fox News and Sirius XM. Berger is an NAACP award-winning journalist and social media ambassador for the United Nations with a BA in English Communications and Education from the University of Maryland and Eastern Shore campus. She holds a business administration certificate from EDAC, Earl C. Graves School of Business at Morgan State University. So thank you, Crystal, for being on our panel today. And next we have Ms. Netta Jenkins, who is the co-founder of Dipper and VP of Global Inclusion at Uncork. So Netta is, as I said, the VP of Global Inclusion at Uncork, which is a leading tech company in the no-code space that is taking DEI to the next level. Netta developed 8 employee resource strategy groups within Uncork, which was featured by Forbes. Netta is also co-founder of Dipper, which is a data technology platform empowering companies to tackle diversity and inclusion. She's a leading voice in the diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, anti-racism, anti-Black, and anti-Blackness field, whose soaring audience engagement was doubtless a key factor in Forbes naming her as one of the top 7 anti-racism consultants in the world. Netta was a speaker for the inaugural Black Enterprise Women of Power Tech virtual conference that claimed 3.7 million viewers and has been featured in Black Enterprise, Forbes, Business Insider, Blavity, CNN, and more for her work. Along the way, Netta has won multiple awards for her impact on corporate and startup diversity and was listed as a 2020 LinkedIn Top Voice. Thank you, Netta, for joining us. And last, for our working professionals on our panel, we have Nora Ali, who is a media entrepreneur and co-host of Business Casual. Business Casual is a podcast from Morning Brew, and Nora has most recently covered the latest innovations and technology as a news anchor on Cheddar, where she was the daily co-host of Between Bells and Closing Bell. At Cheddar, she co-created and co-hosted a weekly series envisioning our post-pandemic future called Fast Forward, Life After COVID-19, and a series examining and celebrating diversity called All Hands, Race Toward Inclusion. Nora previously led teams of engineers and designers as a senior product manager at Jet.com, which she joined prior to its launch and $3.3 billion acquisition by Walmart. She started her career by advising institutional investors on equity investments and IPOs as an Asian equities analyst at Goldman Sachs. Nora graduated from Harvard with a bachelor's degree in statistics and quantitative finance, and Nora is an avid violinist and indoor boulderer in her spare time. Grew up in Minnesota and currently lives in NYC. So thank you, Nora, for being on our panel today. And now I want to introduce 2 friends of mine who are also on the panel, Sammy and Trinola. Sammy is currently a 3rd-year psychology student at the University of Texas at Austin, who is passionate about human sexuality and evolutionary psychology. Currently, she is a research assistant in Dr. Sydney Meston's Sexual Psychophysiology Lab. She hopes to pursue a career in research where she can advocate for a comprehensive sex education for all. Thank you, Sammy, for being here. And last but definitely not least, we have Trinola Brooks, who is a graduating senior from the University of Texas at Austin, pursuing a degree in corporate communications and a minor in entrepreneurship. She is a certified personal trainer and fitness instructor and founder of Grow with NOLA. Grow with NOLA works to support girls and women from adolescence to adulthood in building a healthy lifestyle through movement, mindfulness, and nutrition. Throughout her career, Trinola has worked on various community projects and campaigns, including supporting the American Obesity Association in combating and bringing awareness to childhood obesity, and being a committed Girls on the Run volunteer dedicating to empowering girls to increase confidence, increase physical activity, and learn critical life skills. So those are all of our amazing panelists for today. And now I'm going to kick it off with questions for our working professionals catered towards active listening. To start us off, my first question is, what does active listening mean to you? And we can start off with Nora.
Sure. Joyce, great job with that intro. That's a lot of words to say at once and with a sore throat. So thank you for all of that. Active listening to me means absorbing not just what people mean with their words, but what they mean with their actions. And I've noticed this a lot in the various industries where I've worked, where you can tell when an employee base is starting to get uncomfortable or unhappy or demoralized, and they might not say it out loud, but you can tell by people's attitudes and their drive and their ambition at the time. And I can get into this more later, but that's helped me determine when it was time to pivot, time to jump, time to switch careers. So definitely pay attention to people's vibes all around. That's what active listening means to me.
I think Nora is spot on, right? It's those nonverbal cues, really. How is that person reacting, right? And I think a part of actively listening is actually one of the hardest things for us as human beings to do. I myself find it very challenging at times to actively listen. And what I tend to do is I will then repeat what someone is saying. I'll say, okay, so you meant this. Is this, or is this what you're saying? So that it really kind of gets into my brain there. But I think it's really about being able to be mindful of what an individual is trying to portray, their feelings, their reactions, and then also being unafraid to repeat those things, right? To make sure that you're actually practicing on your end.
Yeah, Crystal, take it away.
Yes, well, I would say, Joyce, to me, active listening is actually being present. More oftentimes than not, especially as women and women of color, we often have so much going on in our day-to-day lives, and life can be extremely chaotic. And so for me, active listening is really taking a moment to be present in the space that you're in and with the people that you're in, and intentionally listening to not only respond, but to understand what is attempting to be communicated to you. And kind of piggybacking on what Netta said, you know, really repeating back the question to someone so that you are really understanding what they're saying to you and not putting your own connotations onto what someone may be saying. And that's when the presentness kicks in, because when you're present in the conversation, it really helps you actively engage in a way that you normally can't when things are happening around you, like palm trees in the background.
Yes, definitely. Oh yeah, for sure, Netta.
Can I say one more thing? The thing about active listening, which is very, very funny, sometimes you have to question yourself. Why am I not engaged right now? Mm-hmm. And so I do that often. Is it because maybe this conversation is boring, right? Or am I, what aspect of this am I finding that I'm just not connecting to it? And so when I start to ask myself those questions, even as I'm trying to actively listen, I'm like, okay, Netta, take a step back, right? Because one, you're not listening to anything this person is saying, but what's happening here? Is it because of the dynamic or the relationship that you have with this individual? Did something happen, you know, earlier this day? Do I need to maybe reschedule this conversation and let this person know, hey, I'm not present right now, like Crystal was saying. So I think there are various methods and strategies, because I know this is something that I definitely struggle with. Even today, I'm not going to lie.
If I can add as well, I think we just all need to get more comfortable with pauses and with silence, because as we're having conversations, whether it's on a first date, or for me, I interview lots of people for work, you can't just be thinking of your next question while that person is responding. And if you want to absorb what they're saying and then think of your next question, that's maybe tied into what they're saying and transitions into your next question, that takes time to figure that out. So I think generally we as human beings are not cool with silence. We'd like to talk over each other, and it's much more difficult on Zoom because there's lags and whatnot. So let's just sit in a little bit of silence sometimes. It's okay. There, good job. That was great.
I'm getting uncomfortable.
See, even like 2 seconds of silence is like, wait, what? What's next? What's happening?
Yeah, thank you so much. Those are all great answers. And I definitely, especially as a student and like trying to network, you're always trying to think of like what to say next to the person. So that's a really good point, Nora, of trying to, sit with the silence and definitely be present, like Crystal said. But yeah, our next question is, how has active listening helped you in your life / as an entrepreneur?
For me, it's funny, Nora kind of tapped into this because as a journalist, and she currently hosts a show, and having coming from that space, well, oftentimes than not, it's been that thing that made me seem very up on my game. When I'm active listening to someone and hearing what they're saying, and they know that I'm present, they know that I'm attentive, and I actually care about what they're saying and not moving on to the next question, like Nora said, is given me that advantage in the newsroom. And now as a entrepreneur and someone who's actually fundraising, you have to know, right? You have to listen to what the needs are of the investor. What do they want in their portfolio? How do they want to scale their brand? What types of investments do they want to make? And so by listening first and starting off a lot of my pitch conversations, it's given me an upper hand in that space to really know how to sell myself, right? And my product to the people who I'm looking to invest, to build an investment relationship with. So for me, it's been that kind of unique advantage where you can always show someone that you're tuned in and tapped into what they care about, right? And then they in turn care a little bit more about what you care about.
That was active visuals, Netta. She saw me unmute at the same time. That's great. Crystal really nailed it from the television hosting side of it. So I'll tackle it from maybe startup life and in other sorts of workplaces. So as I was alluding to earlier, I've realized that there's a time when a collective employee base is maybe not so excited or enthusiastic about a particular job, especially at startups that start really fun and exciting and everyone is working on this shared mission. And then there comes a time when it's not as fun and exciting anymore. So the way that I've incorporated active listening into work and deciding when to pivot my career is through listening to people's actions, as I mentioned, and their emotions, and also forming friendships with people that I work with. This is sort of controversial. I don't think everyone agrees that you should be friends with your coworkers and your bosses, but I've always leaned into very much becoming friends with my coworkers and my bosses. And that way I just know how people are really feeling and I can get a sense of when it might be time to take that jump. So I would say don't shy away from really, you don't have to be friends with them, but build personal connections with people you work with, because A, that'll make the job so much more fun. It won't feel like you're going to work every day necessarily. And B, you'll just be very tapped into what the sentiment is overall and make decisions accordingly.
Yeah, I think both Crystal and Nora hit it on the nail there. There's a saying that my husband always says to me, Netta, slow to speak and quick to listen. And I'm not sure if any of you have heard that saying, or if your parents have ever said that, but it's incredibly important. And I found even within my career, really sitting in the room, right? Because oftentimes there's a saying that everyone is saying now, having a seat at the table, right? You may have a seat at the table, but you don't have a voice. And so oftentimes, especially as a Black woman, as a Black leader, as an executive, I would find myself having a seat at that table, but not actually having a voice. But in those moments, I listen. Oh, and I listened very, very keenly, right? And so going back to what Nora was saying, starting to listen to the reactions and the behaviors of folks within those meetings, and then being able to leverage those things that I'm learning about those individuals to then progress, right? And to really be able to kind of drive the conversations around, hey, here are some things that they continuously bring up or that are important to them. Let me tap into that. And then we'll start to kind of bridge the gap there and have a greater conversation. I've found as an executive that has helped me to really navigate in very difficult situations and in difficult spaces. And so my background is in behavioral psychology and communication. So listening is a very important piece of that. But I definitely think listening in those spaces where you definitely don't or may not have that voice, you can use that to your leverage pretty often, right? And folks, other executives, white men, I would say specifically, they didn't even know. It's like, wait, Netta, how did you know this? well, you actually just said it. And I actually just listened. And now they're like, wait, hold on. I want to be an advocate for you, right? I want to sponsor you. I want to make sure that you're in this room and you're talking, you're speaking up, you're speaking up on some of these particular topics that we have here. So that has been really helpful in navigating my career.
Yes, thank you, ladies. And it seems like the common theme with all your answers has been like kind of understanding like who you're listening to. That's been able to, help you make progress in your career or whatever. And that's something that's definitely, emphasized in the WIELD program. Like when we've done customer interviews, we definitely want to be able to understand our customer all the way through. And that's something that Ruben really pushes us to do. But yeah, it's really awesome to see how it's helped you in different aspects of your career and your life. But the next question kind of ties into the last one, but why do you think listening to others is important?
Fine. For all the reasons that we just laid out. But I do want to say, Joyce, you're doing a great job of actively listening right now, because it is very difficult to be moderating a panel with multiple people and being able to summarize what they've just said, what you've just heard, and then moving on to the next question. So great stuff. So I'm just going to use that as an example. It's important to actively listen because you're also helping audiences, you're helping other people understand and synthesize all the information that's around them. So I would just say, great job to you, Joyce, for the way that you're handling all of this so far. Very good job at active listening.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is we're all leaders in our own way, and we're also all humans, right? And we like oftentimes to feel like folks care, right? We want people to care about what we're saying, what we're doing. And so I think it's incredibly important to actively listen so that you can form those stronger bonds in those relationships. Once someone knows that, hey, this person's really paying attention to what I'm saying, that relationship is able to grow and be even more fruitful and sustainable.
I'll sum up the question by just saying it's important because it's not about you. It's really about the mission and the purpose that you have on your life and the work that you're assigned to do. And if you are emotionally intelligent enough to come outside of yourself and listen to people, you can really tap into being effective, right? I think that a lot of times we are so caught up in the task at hand and what we need to do. But if we step outside of ourselves and actually take a moment to establish some level of empathy by listening and engaging in those kinds of ways and knowing that it's really not about you and it's about the mission or the cause that you're there to serve, you grow a lot more. And the last part about it is you learn, right? If you're always talking, if you're always the first to speak, if you're the person in the room that always knows everything, then you're in the wrong room, right? You need to get into rooms that are going to stretch you and expand you. And it's funny, Netta and I, we were working on a project together, myself, her, and another colleague. And I was so caught up in my emotions in the conversation about allies, right? And these two were both at, in leadership roles, VP roles in their organizations. And I was stagnant within my organization. And they were saying, Crystal, you need an ally that's not a Black woman. You can't do it yourself. And I was so emotional. And I know Netta recalls the conversation. I was like, I don't need a blonde to help me do this, right? But I wasn't listening to what they were saying, and as I can now look back at that conversation and really dissect it and see how what they were talking with me about was pushing me and expanding me outside of my box. And it only came when I was emotionally intelligent enough to actually listen to what they were saying and not going to my emotions. So I would say the other piece of that is when you listen, you really do learn something that will expand you and grow.
Wow, Crystal, love that. You were listening.
Absolutely. I second that. And especially as like a student, Sammy, Trinol, and I can definitely relate to learning through listening, especially at UT, which is such a great school. We have the opportunity to, connect with a lot of cool people and go to different events and, be a part of things like this and be able to, actively listen and learn. But Crystal, you mentioned how active listening isn't necessarily about you, but this next question does make it about you. So this question is, has there ever been a time where you personally felt that you weren't heard? And if so, how did you navigate that? And do you have any tips for those in similar situations?
Yes, so I'll go first. And it really goes back to when I was a little girl. So I grew up in a very old school household. My grandmother was there with me most of the time, and in the Black community and a lot of other minority communities, you don't ask questions, you just do what they say. you know? And so for me, it made me a little introverted because I was more oftentimes than not silenced when I was curious. But that did prompt me to start writing and journaling a lot. And that's where I developed my love for actual broadcasting, right? And so, you know, it was twofold. Like a lot of it helped me to really spend a lot of time with myself and my thoughts and process them in a unique way. And I do think that as I evolved as a woman, the benefit of it is it goes back to the learning piece of it. Because I was quiet in a lot of those moments, I learned a lot from my elders, that a lot of my other cousins and people in my family, a lot of the traditions and a lot of the day-to-day routines that the elders in my family had, I now can convey those to the next generation. And so for me, it's not in the context of work, it's more of a personal thing as far as listening was concerned, or being silent. But it really benefited me in the end, because I do believe when I do have my own legacy, I can teach them the traditions, but also encourage them to participate in those conversations, and where it can become a very special experience that brings the old to the new and is something for the next generation to enjoy. So,
you know, and I guess I'll take this to a more personal level. For me, as a young person, I was always pretty outspoken and very vocal, which is very interesting because, both of my parents, I come from an African household, which, similar to what Crystal was saying, you kind of do as you're told, don't talk too much, don't ruffle any feathers, right? But I was very vocal. And the one moment where I was truly silenced is when a white woman had spit in my mother's face and said, "Blacks don't belong in my neighborhood." And so I found myself for the first time actually silent. Right. And that energy and that silence that I had, I used that as momentum to then lift my voice for other people from overlooked populations. And it's the very work that I do today. So moments like that, of course, no one wants to be a part of that, right? Like that's a very, very hard and traumatic thing to go through. But I also oftentimes kind of question, like, hey, if I didn't have that experience, would I go as hard as I do now? Right, in terms of lifting my voice. And I think it's like those pivotal moments that we have to kind of stop and pause, similar to what Nora was saying, reflect, and really start to see, hey, how did I take that traumatic experience and use it as leverage to propel within the work that I do today and the fight that I do for other people. So I'm not going to say I'm happy for that particular situation, but it definitely helped me tremendously and how I navigate today.
Yeah, that's an amazing job channeling a traumatic situation into a productive life that you've had. So that's great for you, Netta. So I have noticed more and more over time in different career paths that you really do have to work a lot harder to be heard as a woman. We hear that, growing up, we hear that all the time, but it's fact in any line of work. And I mean, this Zoom is a prime example of us just being very respectful of each other and muting when we're not speaking, not talking over each other. I had a Zoom with a bunch of white men earlier today, and it was hard for me to get a word in. And part of my job as being a host is to get a word in, but I found it difficult in that particular meeting. So I think it's okay as a woman to be a broken record, to maybe be a little bit more assertive than is comfortable for you. And I've had experiences where I haven't been heard, where I bring up issues of diversity and inclusion in a workplace where we pay lip service, we say we're focused on diversity, but we're not actually hiring diverse people. Or if we do hire people from marginalized backgrounds, we're not giving them resources to lift them up in that particular workplace. And I remember there was a time where I would bring it up in every single one-on-one meeting I had with my manager, to the point that he would get annoyed at me. And I would still bring it up every single time. And there had been points where I was on the verge of tears because it really felt like he wasn't hearing what I was saying. But the company made change as a result, because I was the loudest voice and I kept saying it, and I felt guilty. I felt almost embarrassed that I had to bring it up every time. But sometimes you just have to do that. So as women, and women of color especially, be annoying, be a broken record, because that's what it takes sometimes to have people listen.
And just to add to that though, but don't be afraid to have a sponsor in your corner or someone that's going to be your ally, because oftentimes what I've found is, even as women of color, you can be that person, really kind of the voice, right, for others. And then you have a bunch of people trying to put you down. It's like, oh no, we want her out of here. There's just too much that she's saying. So really kind of navigating it and making sure that you have people in your corner as well that are going to be allies, supporters, and champions of what you're saying, and the action that you want to take is important.
And Joyce, I'm sorry, I have to jump in on this because they both touched on so many great things. I think the other piece of it is also know something that I learned from my aunties is that your ice has to be colder as a woman. Like you could have the same bucket of ice as a man, right? But your ice has to be cold. It came from the same freezer, but it has to be colder. So in going to those conversations and being the broken record and then having your actual ally and support there with you, also make sure you have your validation, have your supporting documentation to show that this is the work that I've done, these are the results that I delivered, and this is why I either deserve the raise or this is why we need more diversity at the table. But make sure that you have your ducks in a row and that your ice is colder, so there's no way that anyone can discount or discredit what your ally is saying or the amount of times that you said it, because you have that information there and readily available.
Thank you for adding that on, Crystal. I've never heard that before, but I'm definitely going to start using that phrase because that's incredible. We love. But kind of tying into our next question, Nora and Netta hit some points that really provide a great transition, and relates to our experiences as women of color. But a lot of times as women of color, we are actively listening to others and their needs, but fail to do the same for ourselves. So can you speak about a time when you realized that you needed to listen to yourself and what changes you made to do so?
I'll go because this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I haven't really listened to myself, I think, my entire life, my entire career until the pandemic. Because not only have we been in this terrible, tumultuous time collectively over the last almost 2 years, but I also totally switched careers this year where I suddenly became an entrepreneur overnight. It wasn't my intent at the time. I got a call from an investor and I was all in all of a sudden. And on paper, all of that was my dream. I agreed to do it. I was very excited. But then I realized that with all of that came more anxiety than I've ever had in my entire life. And I've been focusing on the present and the now and finding happiness and really listening to my body, listening to my brain, what actually brings me joy day to day versus looking at the next milestone, the next goal, even looking at the next week, because we are very ambitious women on this entire panel. We're always looking for the next best thing. So my tip in listening to yourself is just slow down. Again, it comes back to pauses. We all need to pause more. Slow down and think about what actually fuels you, brings you energy, brings you joy. And for me, it's little things like hugging my nieces or eating chicken fingers. I'm just trying to do more of that. And it's okay to slow down and pause and listen to your needs because your work will still be there at the end of the day. And I think a lot of us are collectively trying to find that happiness right now after a terrible last couple of years.
All right, I'll beat you to it, Crystal. This one is hard, and I'm going to be really, really personal. Is this the safe, open space? Are y'all ready? All right. I'd have to say my marriage. Right. I was kind of at a crossroads, especially in the summertime, really trying to figure out if I wanted to move forward in my marriage. Right. And that's a very, very hard thing when you have children involved as well. And one of the things, and thank you, Nora, for saying that, pausing is so important. And we as human beings just don't do it enough because we're always kind of chasing the next thing. But I really gave myself a weekend pause. And I thought about, okay, what are the things that really, really make me happy? And recently I had realized that a part of it was I was allowing my family to really dictate how I felt about my husband, right? And sitting with myself and realizing that I actually love this man, right? And there are things that we can work out, but I'm allowing my family to kind of dictate that. And so it's, again, I think it's really, really important when we start to kind of make decisions to listen to ourselves and start to question, hey, is this making me happy? Is this not making me happy? Why is it? Are there other influences that are kind of clouding what my decision will be, and sit with it. sit with it so you process and you don't just kind of make a quick decision. But that was it for me recently, I would say.
I would piggyback on the same exact thing that they both said, knowing when to pause. As women, we take care of everybody, even if you're the little sister, you're the cousin, you're the auntie, you're the mom. So for me, that's why I'm in the Dominican Republic. My body was breaking down physically. I left a network newsroom. I was there for a decade, and then I jumped right into a startup, kind of like what Nora is saying, in the middle of a global pandemic. So we were actually creating the news as it was happening. We were reporting deaths and uncertainty and processing it with our families and losing friends and loved ones. And then I went into founding a tech company. Like, who does that, right? And so I started to get a lot of physical ailments that just were manifesting in shakiness, feeling like anxiety, confusion. And I had to take a moment to really listen to my body. And for years, I just always would keep going. Even if I felt exhausted or if my hair started thinning, I would just keep going and doing. And I realized that when you get to a point where your body is now giving you physical signs that you need to listen to me and you need to slow down and you need to be kind to me. That's the key thing that I got from listening to myself, was that, Crystal, be kind to yourself, love yourself, do something for you. And people will ask you, well, how long are you going to be in the Dominican Republic? I don't know. I don't have a return flight. I'll be here as long as I am, and really being true to myself in that space. And also owning and hearing myself in the sense that I deserve all the goodness out here that's for me. And if I don't listen to myself, if I don't listen to my heart, like my desires, that I won't be any good to anybody. I won't be able to take care of anyone because I haven't taken a moment to listen to myself and in turn care for myself.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. And thank you everyone for your vulnerability with answering that question. I think we can all relate to having to slow down and listen to ourselves with the pandemic, especially. And that I'm going to do a shameless plug for a WIELD event that's happening November 18th for self-care. Kind of ties into the aspect of slowing down and listening to yourself. So tune in then. But yes, definitely appreciate all of your vulnerable answers. And we're going to move on to our last question for our professional panelists. But any advice for those trying to foster deeper understanding in their own lives or businesses?
I think we go through these exercises as entrepreneurs to figure out what our mission, vision, and values are for the business that we're running. But I don't think we do that enough for ourselves. And I just in this past year have come up with my own personal mission, which has helped me make decisions for my career, for my family, for friends, my personal life broadly. So I think it's important to just treat yourself like a business, because you are the most important business that you will ever interact with, and establish your own personal mission and understand what drives you, and that'll help you make decisions for the rest of your life.
Sure. I would say for me, my advice would be to take a moment to itemize every single thing that you've done. One thing that I've done since I've been here in the Dominican Republic, I just committed to sitting on the balcony and writing a list of like every major and minor accomplishment that I've made, in the last 10 to 15 years. And it almost brought me to tears, because it's kind of like what Nora was saying, you're on to the next goal and you're on to the next goal, and you don't realize how amazing you are until you take a moment to really write it down and then just see it on paper. So my advice would be, if you really want to listen to yourself more, if you even want to understand what others may be conveying to you about how you may need to grow or be stretched or how amazing you actually are, just take a moment to write down every single thing that you've done. If you got into this amazing program like WIELD, if you started a new internship under the leadership like Samantha has done, right? Like, those are major things that the average person just isn't doing, right? Have you launched a fitness blog like Trinola, right? Write those things down and give yourself credit so you can really hear for yourself, like how amazing you are and all that you've accomplished. So that's what I would recommend.
I love that advice. And sometimes it's so hard to reflect, like as much as you may want to do it, right? You're just like, okay, I'm going to use this time to reflect, right? That's what everyone's doing. And then you're like, I didn't reflect today. I just fell asleep, right? Oftentimes what I like to do is I like to put some questions together and ask the people that are closest to me, hey, how am I showing up? What am I doing? What impact do you see that I've made? And it's very interesting when you start to ask those questions, you actually get to see what people are seeing from that. So I'm like, wait, hold on. I created and worked on this huge project. No one brought this up, right? I almost died behind this project. No one brought this up, but you brought up the other thing. What? Right. And so when I start looking at that, I'm like, wait, hold on. Who am I doing this for? Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for other people? So creating those questions and asking the people around you, I found to be most impactful for me personally. I've tried my best to like have my safe space, netta moments, right? Where it's just nice and calm and quiet. And then I end up doing something else. It just doesn't, anyone that's like me, right? You find yourself doing something totally different when it's like, oh, today is a self-care day. I think that that's something that has definitely helped me.
Thank you, Netta. And I think that's a great way to close out our questions for our professional panelists. So once again, thank you so much. And now I'm going to turn it over to our amazing WIELD students. And just as a reminder, for those who didn't hear earlier, WIELD stands for the Women's Initiative for Entrepreneurship and Leadership Development. And it's essentially this program where women of color who attend the University of Texas at Austin have the opportunity to develop, their leadership skills, their professional skills, and explore what it takes to become, a leading executive or start their own business. And the first question I have for our WIELD panelists is, what inspired you to join WIELD? And we can start with Trinola.
I would say, and Sammy and Joyce will probably say this too, when we signed up for WIELD, we thought we were going to be learning how to join a company and climb up the corporate ladder of that company and kind of be in the top. And WIELD became something totally different from that. Instead, we were learning how to create our own companies and how to be people who are listening, like the conversation that we had earlier, to what our customers might want or what the people around us might want. So I think a question that I would ask myself is, what inspired me to stay in WIELD? And it's for that exact reason of I have had an active role in creating something that is very close to me. And with WIELD, it's just been empowering for me to really get my hands on something and also make it my own. So that's why I stayed in WIELD.
So my answer is a little bit different than Trinola's. I joined WIELD because my freshman year, I had a really hard time in college. I feel like people don't like to talk about the hard times of college, but I had a really hard time transitioning from my small town, 98% Hispanic Latino population to the University of Texas at Austin. I came undeclared, and honestly, I just felt like I didn't belong. I felt like everybody else knows what they're doing except for me. Now I know that's not true, but that's how I felt. So when I heard about WIELD, it was an entrepreneurship leadership program. And again, I had no idea the career that I wanted to pursue, but it intrigued my interest because I thought, if not entrepreneurship, maybe leadership, because I do feel, or like I've always felt like I'm a leader, maybe not the typical type of leader, but that's something that I wanted to tap into again, because in high school, I felt like I was like doing all these things, president of that club, co-captain of the dance team, whatever. And at UT, I felt like I couldn't do that. And so I just wanted to be able to tap into the leadership side of myself again and have a mentor like Ruben and like the friendships that I've created in WIELD to guide me through that.
Beautiful, beautiful answers. You guys kind of both touched on this already a little bit. How has WIELD helped you grow as an individual? And I guess we can kind of start with Sammy, since you already kind of talked about that, but feel free to elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, so like I said, I struggled with very low self-esteem and low self-confidence. So I would say that's the biggest thing that I've gotten out of the program. I was constantly pushed like throughout this program to go out of my comfort zone. And I really didn't like it at first. I feel like no one really likes to be pushed out of their comfort zone. But I look back in hindsight and think of all the things that I was pushed to do. Like the ladies would push me to like speak in class, or like if we were going to have like an event, they would push me to speak, and I would always be like very upset. But then afterwards I'd be like, oh, like I realized I can do things. And so it gave me the confidence. It gave me the confidence to do things like public speaking that I wasn't necessarily comfortable with.
And also, just to kind of piggyback off of what Sammy said, we're all, Joyce, Sammy, and I, we're still young. And throughout our college career, it's all about kind of figuring out what we want, or it feels like it's about you have to figure out what you want to do. You have to figure out what career you want to go into. You have to figure out where do you want to live. And even now, I'm struggling with those things, but what I have realized in WILD is that you have time to be able to think through these things, and you have a network of people around you who still have those same questions, but are also still into helping you figure it out. And maybe those aren't your mentors, but maybe those are also your peers. Joyce and I are we're both looking for jobs, and we're helping each other every single day with that and growing with each other. So WILD has helped me be able to grow with people, and that's something that I didn't have before I joined the program. I didn't have that support system that was really committed to my growth.
Yeah, I can definitely verify that Trinol and I are both, navigating that job search, but kind of touching on what both Trinol and Sammy said, we've all been able to, find a really awesome community of women at our school who are truly sisters, as Ruben says, and supports us in our growth in whatever we decide to do with our, academic careers or entrepreneurial journeys or whatever. And having that community has been a really awesome part of our experiences at the University of Texas. But kind of touching into that last question, what is the biggest takeaway from your experience in WIELD?
I think my biggest takeaway is to believe in your ideas. When I first joined WIELD, we got the chance to write down all the ideas that we had, that whatever we could think of that we would want to work on. And I found myself constantly trying to downplay the ideas a little bit, like, no, you won't be able to do this, or you don't have the correct knowledge to do this, or certifications to do this, or any of that. And really just putting myself down before I've even had the chance to try any of these things. So my biggest, and Ruben would be like, don't talk yourself down. Don't shut yourself down for something that you could potentially really do and make successful. And that has been my biggest takeaway, to not talk down on yourself, to be someone who believes in your ideas and execute them, or at least attempts to execute them before you try to cross them off your list.
I would say that my biggest takeaway from WIELD is that rejection is okay. I have been terrified of rejection all my life. Hardcore. I feel like nobody likes rejection, but to me, it was the point where I just would not apply to do anything because I was so scared of being told no. And Ruben and the program, they were always pushing me to go after things that I wanted and email people. Ruben would just be like, email them. And a lot of times, 99% of the time, I did not get a response from the people I emailed, or I got no. And then after a while, the feeling just started being neutral, and I just didn't care about rejection. And then I finally got a yes. So it was kind of all those no's and no replies were worth it in the end. So yeah, that's the biggest thing that I would take, is that rejection is okay.
Amen to that, Sammy. Oh, Crystal, you want to say
I just want to say something. Sammy, I love that you said that. One of my favorite quotes is, one yes can erase 1,000 no's. So keep on getting the no's, because once you get that yes, the no's don't even matter. So it was a great point. Just want to say that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And the next question is, how do you think you would be different today if you weren't in the WIELD program?
I would say before WIELD, I wanted to be a news reporter like Crystal and Nora. I wanted to be someone who was on TV and the face of everything and known for my ability to public speak. And then I quickly realized that, one, I don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning and have to talk to people. And also, I don't really like writing that much. So that's probably not the career for me. But before WIELD, it was constant. Like I mentioned earlier, it was constant. What do you want to do? You have to figure that out, because your parents at home who sent you to college, they're asking you, what job are you going to get? What are you going to school for? And having that constant pressure coming from all of those outside voices was something that really was starting to shape my entire life. And I think without WIELD, I wouldn't have had that. I would have went with one of those careers of something that really went into my major. Like, for example, I'm a communication studies major, but most of what I do is around exercise, and you would think I'd be a kinesiology major or something, but I'm not that. And I know that that's okay, that I don't need to be completely in this one spot. I don't need to have this really dialed down career decision. I can make whatever I want to make of my career. I can make my own career, and that is perfectly fine.
I would say I have a similar answer. I would say that my career choice probably wouldn't be the same if I hadn't been in WIELD. Like I said, I joined when I was undeclared and I had no idea what I wanted to do. But throughout the program, we were encouraged to do so much self-reflection and do a lot of activities. And like the emphasis was like, what are you passionate about? And I feel like through the program, I was able to figure out what I am passionate about, which is psychology, which I had somewhat known before, but I had always told myself, like, no, like, you're not going to do psychology because it takes a lot to like be a researcher or make it in academia, and you can't do that. And so, like, it was like a combination of like reflecting on my passions throughout the program and getting enough confidence just to say, you know what, I'm going to pursue this. And so, yeah.
Yes, I love both of your answers, and I can definitely relate, Trinola, to figuring out, like, learning that you can shape your own career. And I feel like that's definitely something that I learned throughout my college career as well, because I definitely want to do a lot of different things, but WIELD has definitely created that safe space for us to explore, what we're interested in. Just two more questions left for our WIELD panelists. First one is, why do you think WIELD is important?
Well, the first reason I would say is just there's nothing like this that I have seen. Nothing on UT's campus or nothing at other universities that I've seen like this. And I think it's very important that I'm surrounded by other women of color who are interested in just learning more about the things that we probably wouldn't know if we weren't in the business school. And I think that just the exposure that we're getting from this program is something that I probably would not have had. I wouldn't be exposed to Crystal and Nora and all the other amazing people in this conversation without WIELD. And I wouldn't be able to have the connections that I have right now without WIELD. So I think WIELD is important just to show people like us that there is more out there, and also that there are people who look like us who are leading those conversations.
Yeah, I would say ditto to what Trinola said. Everything, yes, I agree. And then I would also, just to add on to that, I think I've made like amazing friends through this program, and I appreciate like the support that I've gotten like from all the girls. And like I said, like my freshman year, like I was so lost and so lonely. Like I felt like I had no friends. And like literally I just hung out with girls from the program like this weekend. So I would say that like WIELD is important if you feel lost, even if you aren't sure if you want to be an entrepreneur or be in the corporate world, because I'm not. The support that these ladies and Ruben have given me in like pursuing what I'm passionate about has really made a difference.
Oh, we'd love to see it. That makes my heart so happy. But moving on to the last question for our WIELD panelists, why do you think other students should join WIELD?
Maybe this is my own bias, but you should join WIELD, one, because there's not just the people of your cohort, there's people who are looking to support you and your cohort and your dreams. And also, whether you have something that maybe not a entrepreneurship interest or anything like that, but maybe if you just have a passion, maybe if you just want to, like Sammy said, increase your public speaking skills. These are all skills that you can build within WIELD, surrounded by people who are just like you, or maybe not just like you, but still have something in common with you and also have a common goal with you. And also join WIELD because you get to literally make this program yours. You get to do what you want to do in it. And the people who are running this program, they are listening to you. They want to hear what you have to say and how you want things to happen. And I think Joyce and Sammy and I have been able to really craft this program into something that is our own, that we can do with whatever we want to do with it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that WIELD is a really cool program because, like, in a sense, we're in charge of it, or like the students are in charge of taking the program, where it wants to go. And like, that's super cool. I feel like most programs at UT rules are set in stone. And so you get a lot of creativity, like creative freedom as a student to like pursue and present what you want. For example, last semester, the project that I presented was not a company. I presented my personal growth and the plans that I have for the future and like a game plan and bullet points of what I plan to do. And so, yeah, like I said, you have a lot of creative freedom and like nothing, you're not put in a box, is what I'm trying to say. So I just think it's a really great program if you want to grow and get out of your comfort zone.
Yes, thank you, Sammy. That's such a great way to close off our panels. So once again, thank you so much to both of our panels, our working professionals and our WIELD panelists. Now I'd like to open up the floor to any audience questions and also any questions that our panelists may have for each other. So feel free to type in the chat or come off of mute.
Well, I just want to say that you ladies are amazing. You are on the right path. You all are articulate. You're very driven. I commend the three of you for taking your evening because you're a student and you have work to do, just like we have our professions. But I just think you ladies are very impressive. The world is your oyster, and keep building, stay connected with one another so you guys can scale throughout the years. But I think you guys are on the right path. I just want to say you guys are amazing. Joyce, you did a great job hosting tonight. As Nora reiterated earlier, like you're amazing. So you may have a career in moderating. You can get paid to do this.
I'll hook you up, Joyce. Yeah, I'm just super impressed with all the lessons you guys have already learned in your lives, which I'm sure Crystal agrees with me. It took us much longer to figure out a lot of these things, but make sure you guys, follow up with us. We've been in various roles in our lives, and the power of a DM is very underestimated. So DM, email, whatever. That's something that I've learned over my career as well. So you would be shocked at how willing people are to just help you, find you a job, help you figure out what your right career path is. So hit us up, anyone who's listening.
Yes, thank you so much. And also kind of turning back the compliments over to you guys. You guys are both incredible, and Netta, who had to hop off because of her kids. But thank you so much. We are so appreciative of having the opportunity to share this space with you guys and be here with you guys. But we did have a question in the chat from Ruben. Shout out to Ruben. What do you recommend for the students to find the ideal internship, and how do you make sure you can get paid for it?
I think that's a great question. There is no such thing as an ideal internship, but you can move your way towards one. Yeah, I went to so many interviews when I was in college to figure out what that close to ideal internship was. And you really don't get a sense of a job until you've been in it for a while. And I based my inclination to pick a particular role over another. I based it on again, going back to vibes, how I felt talking to the people that were interviewing me. Because I went through the usual circuit of interviewing for consulting and finance and banking jobs, because that was the cool thing to do back then when I was in college. Now it's more startups are the defaults where people go now. But there was a lot of, grilling and brain teasers and that sort of thing. You could get a real sense of if you were going to be happy in that role based on the way that you were being interviewed versus people who just wanted to get to know you as a person. So make sure you pay attention to the vibes first and foremost. As far as getting paid, I don't have a good answer to that. I was offered 2 different internships my summer after junior year. One was, I would get paid, but very, very little. And then the other was much higher because that one was in finance. I ended up picking the finance one. I do sort of regret not taking the other one. It was with Major League Baseball on their data science team, which would have been very cool. But you just have to assess, where you are in your life. Are you able to take a role that maybe doesn't pay as much, that might give you better experience? Or do you want to take a job because of the pay? So that's really your own personal preference, but don't be afraid to ask for what the pay is and to ask for more if you think it's appropriate.
Yes, and I have to piggyback on what Nora said. There is no ideal internship, right? You just do it. I have a very unique experience. I was actually offered a internship my junior year at a CBS affiliate, and I had to turn it down because I had to work. I was paying my way through college. And so I went on a whole journey of circling back to journalism. And I believe that if I had taken that internship and maybe worked at night and just made it work, I may have gone a different path with my journalism career. So I say you take the internship, whether you're getting paid or not, and you figure it out. I know that sounds a little crass, but a big barrier to entry for specifically women and women of color is the fact that a lot of us can't take internships and we don't get an opportunity to do that summer networking, which more oftentimes than not lends itself to a full-time employment once you graduate. And so I would say you take it, you make it work, and potentially seeing if you could find someone to sponsor you for the summer, if that is an option. Speak to your network within your university, people like Ruben and other leadership there, to see if they know someone who wants to sponsor a young woman so that you could do the internship. So for me, I believe that whatever experience you get, you make it work for you. And that is something that you can add to your resume. And if you go into the environment knowing that your glass is already half full, you're going to benefit from the internship either way. It's all in what you do with it. If you decide that I'm just going to go in here and staple copies and pick up the phone, then that's what you've chosen to make the internship. But if you are stapling papers and getting coffee, but still networking, you're achieving your goal, right? And so what I recommend is take the internship, make it work. And if you really do have some financial challenges, speak with the people within your university about potential sponsors and other stipends that you could potentially get to make it happen.
And speaking of networking, that was spot on, Crystal. I would highly, 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 highly recommend for any internship or job you apply to, try to navigate it through a known entity in your network or an intro or second degree acquaintance. It makes the world of difference if you just know a person who can make an intro versus applying through the job site. As someone who's hired, going through resumes, it's just mind-boggling if you're going through the system. And the second someone says, hey, I actually have this former coworker or, my friend's cousin, that sounds like nepotism, but you know what I mean? Like, I know this person that would be great for this role. Immediately you're like, all right, let me talk to that person because they have somebody who is recommending them. So I could not emphasize that more. Work your networks. It's stressful, but it doesn't have to be stressful. You have me and Crystal now. We have vast networks. So again, hit us up.
I just wanted to add, so Nora, I like that you said the networking through your network, because I go to Ruben all the time and I'm like, can you just slide my resume here so I can push my application up? But also what Crystal said, you said something about sponsoring, getting someone to sponsor you for the summer. And I thought about how I used to basically do pageants, and you would have people sponsor you in that way. And I've never really thought of it of where maybe I can have someone sponsor me for the summer while I pursue my entrepreneurship idea or something like that, because that's another way that we could take that. But I do have an actual question for y'all, since I am deep into the job search. Do you have anything or any advice for establishing your worth to companies, and like how you might ask for compensation, or maybe you ask for more in compensation as a entry-level candidate?
Absolutely. I have to jump in on this one. So for me, as I mentioned, I got into journalism late, right? So it was like my 5th career and I didn't have any journalism experience. I hadn't done those internships. And so I really took the job because it was the job that said yes, right? I didn't do any research on how much the role should pay. I didn't even quantify or qualify my past experience in other industries that was significant and how that translated into the value that I would add to the organization. And so I came in at a very low-balled salary. It took me a very long time to work my way up the food chain. I had to fight a little bit harder for pay increases because I know that I was marginalized in a lot of senses of the word. And so what I would say is, one, do your research on the role, right? Know what the role is, know what they're paying coming in the door. Always go in asking at the high end so that you can negotiate. One thing that Puff Daddy said that I love, Sean P. Diddy Combs, he said it doesn't become a negotiation until you're willing to walk away. And so sometimes people just want to see, do you actually know your worth? Do you know your value, right? So After you've done that research, be okay with letting them call you and effort you. And I know that sounds crazy because you're new, right? And you're coming in the door, but you have to learn very early on how to advocate for yourself. There's a platform called Win Summit, WIN. And it's an organization for women to help them negotiate contract salaries. They do a lot of workshops. So start looking at different videos on how to negotiate. But the last piece of this, it goes back to something that I think we all said earlier, is really itemize what you've done, what you've created, what you've built, what you've done with WIELD, right? What you've done as a professional trainer, your engagement on social media, and quantify that, because you're bringing those resources to the table and there's a dollar value that you can assess to that, right? So also, outside of knowing what the starting salary is, knowing the valuable skill set that you bring to that and what that looks like in dollars, and having that as the foundation of your conversation to negotiate as well.
And that's such a good question, Trinola, because it is hard entry level to say I'm worth this if you haven't worked before. So it can be quite intimidating, but Crystal has excellent advice on how to address that. But I think what's also important, if you're not able to negotiate your salary, maybe that's just not on the table, make sure you ask what the upward trajectory is for that role. So I have a friend going through that right now where she got offered a position at a tech company that wasn't quite the leveling she wanted. And she asked, well, how long would it take me if I perform well to get to the next level? And they gave her like a pretty specific month and year, right? So she wrote it down. You have a record of it. In fact, you can email your hiring manager, say, you know what, thanks for the conversation. Great to hear that I would be up for a promotion at XYZ date. That way you have something to look towards and you have proof that you have this discussion. So in addition to having those success points that Crystal pointed out, these are the things that I've done well, and these are the projects I've accomplished. You bring that to the table and you say, look, we had this conversation. Let's revisit, salary and title and all of that. So just keep good records of everything that you do and everything you talk about.
Thank you. I find both of those very helpful, just as I'm just navigating the whole thing. So thank you all very much.
I second that. Thank you, because I did recently get an offer that I haven't shared with my friends, Samantha and Trinola, but I will let you know. I don't know if I can say it because we're being recorded, but I saw the salary and I was like, I don't know. I have no perception of what is a good starting salary. So I saw the number and I was like, I don't know about that. That's definitely good points. And thank you, Crystal. But I did want to ask one question as well. And also feel free to type questions in the chat. But in the meantime, I wanted to ask, both Trinola and I are navigating this job search, but we definitely want to be entrepreneurs and grow that to become our full-time jobs in the future. But in the meantime, we got to pay our bills and live. So how have you been able to navigate, if you have been in the situation where you've had to navigate working your 9 to 5 in addition to pursuing your personal business and trying to build that up? How was that navigation been, and tips for time management and things like that, if that applies to you?
I had always had that entrepreneurial bug since I started my career, and I knew I wanted to start something, but I didn't know what that thing was. So that's why I had various different careers before I got to actually being a founder, being an entrepreneur. But you don't necessarily have to take the plunge right away in entrepreneurship. Every single job allows you to hone the skills that you need to be an entrepreneur. A couple examples from my career is at my last job as an anchor on Cheddar. Anchors didn't really pitch shows. I mean, we would all pitch shows, but not everyone did the legwork of here's the audience research, here's the format, here are sample episodes, here are sample guests. And I felt like that was the entrepreneurship bug in me when I would pitch shows and have these extensive packets that I would hand my producers. So that was one way for me to exercise pitching things to people, because pitching, Crystal can attest to this, is 90% of being an entrepreneur, not just to investors. You just got to sell your idea generally to people. So I think if you just carve out time to figure out your personal business, don't think that it has to be a huge chunk of your time, because you can learn very, very, very important skills in your traditional 9 to 5 jobs at the same time.
Absolutely. I totally agree with what Nora said. It's enjoy the journey and know that every piece of the journey, even when it does not feel good, when it feels pointless, when you're irritated, you looking at them I got to look at them again today. All of that is creating a temperament for you to be a better business owner, right? Learning how to deal with employees that you don't really like, right? Knowing how to pitch, like Nora just said, being able to manage your time. You can't just learn time management out of thin air, right? And so it's on those jobs that you create a structure. And I would say, kind of to go along with what Nora was saying as well, is start to take pieces of your journey and create your blueprint, right? Start writing down and journaling the things that you do like in the experiences that you're having. And then if you don't like something, think about how you would provide a solution within your business to address it in a different way. And so never losing that entrepreneurial spirit that Nora said. So you can always know in your mind that I'm going to own my own business one day and I'm a boss, but making sure that you're creating the blueprint as you go on your journey and really appreciating and valuing every single step in that process, because you're going to get something from every experience. And the last piece of this I'll say is also respect where you are. Right. I believe that a lot of times we see our vision and it's like, I want to be a boss, and I want to do things my way. And we have a tendency to negate where we are. And knowing that that institution that hired you, they believed in you enough to hire you or offer you a position, right? They have an expectation of how you're going to grow their business and their brand. So respect that opportunity as well, but never lose sight of that vision that you have for yourself. So that's the advice I would give.
Thank you. And that's really awesome. I really like the point that you mentioned about meeting yourself where you are, because Ruben can attest to this, and probably Sammy and Trinola, but I was always the one who's like, I'm not getting a 9 to 5 after I graduate. But here I am, with an offer for a 9 to 5 and doing all that stuff. And I'm not ashamed, like I don't take back, what I said, because I feel like I've had to pivot a lot, with my business and life and things. So I can definitely, now looking back, I can recognize that that's okay and that everyone's journey is different. But at the same time, I haven't lost sight of the vision, and it's still going to happen.
The last thing I'm going to say, though, Joyce, with that too is, now don't be a fool, though, right? Because if you can make 100,000 as your own boss and they're paying you 50, right? Then also, like, if you have a plan of action where you can quantifiably scale a business, right? Like Nora was talking about that pitch, and you can show 3 years of revenue, and then you can actually show that you have customer acquisition strategy, and then you can engage people and you have sales. Girl, go be a boss today, right? But if you don't have that, right, then then do that. So that would be my other piece of it, because I do know that there are a lot of people, specifically in your guys' generation, that has used social media and the internet to create extremely scalable businesses, right? And so if you do have something like Trinola, she has a personal fitness company, right? And if Trinola is getting sales and she can scale that to a point where it's a starting salary coming out of university, then grow that business, right? But if you have one customer and they paying you $15 a week, that you can't live off of that, right? And so I would just say also be mindful of that as well.
Definitely. That's a good point, Crystal. Thank you for that. Okay, and Maya just let me know that we do have another question.
I have a question for Miss Nora and Miss Crystal. I know y'all had a lot of experience with different careers. I just wanted to know, personally, I have ideas, but sometimes I get caught up on, like Trinola said earlier, which idea is a good idea and believe me, not idea, and going forward with it. But I have so many ideas that I want to do, and just kind of like, how did y'all deal with that, with transitioning through different careers and just having that courage to say, well, I think I want to try something different. And I want to know essentially when those ideas, when you do feel like they aren't as successful as you thought they were, when it was appropriate to put it to the side or just completely give up on it.
I've had this philosophy of floating ideas to people very early on. And I think for women, especially who are very ambitious and want to succeed in everything that we do, we tend to overthink things. And you decide, you know what, I have to have every T crossed, I dotted, whatever the saying is, before I make the plunge or make the jump or even float to anyone that I'm considering starting this business or making this career pivot. So if I have even an inkling that I want to host a podcast or I want to do XYZ or I want to try this other career, I just start telling people, because then you'll get very good feedback very early on. And it's not just my closest friends and family. I'll also, ask them to intro me to someone who just works in podcasting or works in tech. So I can just pick their brain. I don't like that phrase, but for lack of a better phrase, I like to pick people's brain very early on. And that's not just for career pivots or starting a new business. It's also within jobs. If you have an idea for a project or a segment on a TV show or whatever it may be, just get people on board, because then they feel invested in your own journey, and you'll have, to Crystal's earlier point, sponsors and advocates and allies for you. So the TLDR version of that is just tell people what you're trying to do, and you'd be shocked at how much great advice and connections you get out of it.
Yes, very true. Agree with everything that Nora said. I'm going to say something that may seem crazy that I wish someone had told me when I was in college. Get your coins early, right? Get your coins when you have all this energy, when your skin is flawless without makeup. Get your coins early. You guys, I'm going to tell you something, and I'm not going to tell you how old I am, right? Nora might know, but still I don't think I even told Nora how old I am. But, do as much as you can while you have the energy, right? So if you are going to this 9 to 5, do that. Then you leave your 9 to 5 and go personal train. Then you go sell books, and then you do a sex clinic on the side. You know what I mean? Like a sex education workshop on the side, those, like, do as much as you can while you're young. Stack your money, right? Look at the things that are working, and then reinvest in yourself. I started doing hair when I was like 12 years old. I used to have a composition notebook, and I used to have clients, and I used to, and I always had money, right? I was born in high school, I did hair, and then I worked in the mall. And so I was doing all of those things, and I kind of trickled over into college. And so when I was out of college, I had some seed money, right, to do some of the things that I wanted to do and invest in myself on top of working a job with benefits. So I would say, for those ideas that you're having that you can actually monetize, get your coins, right? Make money off of those things. And then one of those things might seem to be extremely profitable, right? But the last piece of that is, outside of getting your coins, my dad always says, do what you love and the money will come, right? I'm not saying be broke, right? But commit to those things that you really love to do as well, because that'll lend itself to other opportunities as well. So those are two things that I would say. But while you have the energy, make as much money as you can, and then you can reinvest in yourself later.
I love that. I'm going to steal that for future panels, Crystal. That's great. And listen, you do get very tired very quickly as you get older. So while you have that energy, seriously, work a lot of hours now, because you'll get very sleepy when you're our age.
Thank you so much for that final question. And thank you to our panelists for the great answers. I'm going to pass it over to Maya to close us out.
Thank you so much, Joyce. Ladies, this was incredible. Thank you for sharing your talent, your knowledge, your experiences with all of us. It's been a pretty powerful evening, and we just wanted to give you all a few housekeeping notes before we go. I know we want to be conscious of everyone's time and make sure that we end right on the dot at 7:30. But as you can see here, I've dropped the link to WIELD's website. You can learn more about WIELD and the amazing work that they're doing there at that link. You can also connect with them on Instagram at WIELD Texas. I will also drop that in the chat. And also, if you'd like to learn more about Fyli and connect with our community, please feel free to check us out at our website as well. Thank you all so much again for attending. Thank you all so much again for your time, and we hope to see you all so soon. As you can see, Nora has also dropped her email in the chat, and please feel free to reach out to us at Fyli if you would like to connect with any of our speakers. So thank you all so much again, and I wish you all a wonderful evening. See you soon. Bye, everyone.